This map, taken from the Ventures database for wells to watch, illustrates around 50 billion barrels unrisked prospective resources across 500 wells to watch in the areas that we collect data for. As you can see, the usual suspects are Brazil, Gulf of Mexico, recently Suriname, Guyana, Northwest Europe, Middle East, Southeast Asia. But what really stands out is the number and scale of the many prospective wells that are planned to be drilled in the next couple of years in sub-Saharan Africa. So this region is vital to the upcoming E&P scene. This snapshot from our Ventures dashboard goes into a little bit more detail. You can see the area we've covered here from Namibia to Mozambique includes around 30 wells to watch. Most of those are offshore, around 5 are onshore. Most of them are in Namibia and South Africa, which reflects the vast passive margin area to the west here. But there are clusters of wildcats in basins going up the East Africa side, perhaps reflecting a more gassy tradition in East Africa, but certainly no detraction after the very good success around the Utaniqua Basin in South Africa. And then 1 or 2 smaller campaigns onshore. Operators range, as you might expect, from the biggest, ExxonMobil, to the smallest, Global, and everyone in between. And reserve sizes tend to cluster around the very large, 500 million barrels and bigger, which again reflects the deep water basin floor fan style play in the Western African passive margin. But there are a smaller cluster of smaller prospects around a 1 to 300 million barrel size, and these reflect structurally more robust prospects in shallower waters, in more mature basins, and onshore. The overall estimated cost for these wells again reflects the deep water nature of most of them. And in terms of timing, I guess we could say over the next 12 to 24 months, and probably most of them hopefully will spud this side of 2021. Finally, in terms of chance of success, our database illustrates a grouping around the 15 to 20% mark, and that again illustrates the frontier nature of these deep water marine systems predominantly, and 1 or 2 onshore, as I'll show you today. And then slightly higher chances of success usually coincides with the basins closer to shore and closer to mature oil producing areas. This is a listing of the wells that we've covered in the Southern Africa regions, and I've highlighted some of the wells we'll cover in a little bit more detail. We'll be looking at the Orange Basin in Namibia next, and then the West Cape Coastal Basin offshore South Africa, then Owambo Kavango Basin in Namibia. Then we'll skip across to the Durban Transkei Basin offshore South Africa, look at the Cabora Bassa onshore Zimbabwe, and also touch on the Angoche Basin in Mozambique. So the first well we'll look at is the Venus well. Venus 1, operated by Total. Impact Oil and Gas took this acreage originally a few years ago, shot 3D, mapped this pretty impressive, extensive basin floor fan, comprising of Aptian clastics over lower Aptian source facies, prognosed. And since then, Total farmed in, and then Qatar Petroleum took a piece as well. So, interestingly, further inshore, Shell have a large position over the Deepwater Orange Basin as well. They were targeting the carbonate prospect here in the north, which they called the Cullinan. But since Cosmos came and subsequently left the acreage, we believe they've also mapped some very significant Upper Cretaceous clastic targets, namely Graph, which we believe is the next target to be drilled. But overall, we're looking at the lower Cretaceous clastic systems in the Orange Basin, and as we'll see in a second, we do have significant carbonate potential as well in some of the plays. So if we drop down to the south, the West Cape coastal basin, so this could be described as distal orange or in the deep water, we have the Wolf prospect. Here, Africa Oil Corps and Azinam and local players Rycocure have mapped some impressive closures over in the deep water. In this case, a large four-way dip close carbonate prospect surrounded by prognosed mature Aptian source rock. So these plays in the deep trend still rely on the lower Cretaceous Aptian source, generally because the tertiary isn't as well developed through the Orange Basin system. Certainly, we see potential for the deep water and go towards the coastal basin in around 150 meters of water. We have the Gazania 1 prospect that has been mapped up by Africa Energy and partners. Last year, Azinam farmed in and also brought in Panoro, and Crown have been partners for a while as well. In this part of the passive margin, we also see the opening of a small graben running north-south across the area. And this is seen to play host to a long axial deltaic system, which we know from onshore analogues can be very productive. If you look at similar axial delta systems in the Albertine graben, for example. In this case, there's also a small oil discovery in the epicenter, in the center of the basin, and of course that helps the old adage, if you want to find oil and gas, you should drill near where you've already found oil and gas. In this case, as you can see from this beautiful bit of 3D, the lower Cretaceous, lowermost Cretaceous, Barriasian and around that age, clastic systems are directly up dip from the oil encountered at the 1988 AJ1 well. And so these sands are seen to extend up the axis of the delta to the top of the graben and appear to be cut and sealed by a nice antithetic fault near the top. So this well, a bit more affordable at $20 million, relatively good chance of success because of the presence of oil in the basin, and is expected to test 349 million barrels of oil recoverable. In terms of the Awambo-Kavanga Basin, we go onshore Namibia in this case. This is the PEL 7362 well, which is a name we've given to the well. This has been drilled by Recon Africa, the Canadian listed firm. This is a real wildcat. It's in the middle of a very undrilled basin, although interestingly to the west in the Awambo side of the basin there are 2 or 3 wells with relatively good. So we move back offshore, and this time we go round to the east and southeast coast of southern Africa and the Durban Transkei Basin offshore South Africa. Here we have more of a frontier nature. The acreage was awarded a while ago to Eni and Sasol, and they have been acquiring seismic since. What we do know is that it's a Cretaceous section again. It's predominantly a clastic system, but unlike the West, the tertiary is a lot better developed here, certainly thicker. So for the first time, we see maybe the Upper Cretaceous source kitchen potentially come into play. If you look at some of the results of early prospecting from PASA themselves, they predict a KT boundary with a reasonable overburden, and a good depth of burial to the Cenomanian Turonium, which could add a second fascinating source potential for that for those basin floor fans and slopes there. Further north again, into Mozambique, a number of blocks were awarded in the Angoche Basin to the likes of Eni and ExxonMobil. Again, Qatar Petroleum took a piece of this recently, and certainly the scale of these prospects is large enough to become a world-class play if the petroleum system works. There's a very large play involving basin floor fans in the lower Cretaceous, and this type of relatively subtle play does tend to generate very large prospects with obviously large prospective resources. But again, as you'll see on the cross section in the lower left, we do see a good thickness of tertiary, and that could again bring the upper Cretaceous into play. And given the geometry of the basin, as you can see in that Schlumberger line, we do see potential slope fan systems as well. So channels, fans along the slope system. So a number of plays in the Angoche Basin, which the operators are currently working up. We finish back onshore in the very large Cabora Bassa Basin, onshore Zimbabwe, on the southern side of the enormous Zambezi River. So this is a big, deep basin. It's been going a long time. It has a stratigraphic section going all the way down to the lower Karoo, up into the upper Carboniferous, and all the way to the recent, as you could imagine. And what makes this very fascinating is it's a graben with a subaerial depositionary history. So you could expect a lacustrine source with fluviodeltaic reservoirs, but it also has that geometry that we know works further north in more recent graben basins associated with rifts, and that is the thickening enclosure against the main graben escarpment, and usually through some reactivation, some very large, well-defined closures associated with these anticlines on their inversion structures. And that's exactly what you've got Zarabani prospect, a large stacked system of closed. So to summarize, we've talked about an estimated 7.5 billion barrels of oil potential in the top 100 prospects globally, using a chance of success of 15%. We have estimated 2 billion barrels of that appetite and access post-pandemic improves. Feel free to follow us on social media, LinkedIn, use the barcode scanners below, and certainly hope to reconnect with you in person over the next few months as things improve. Thank you.